So I wanted to talk about this NAACP boycott. I know that I think they're calling it NAACP, but for the sake of this conversation, NAACP. It's quicker to say. Sorry, guys. Love you. They launched Out of Bounds, which is a campaign that is urging Black athletes, alumni, fans, and consumers to withhold support from public universities in states limiting Black voting representation. Now, we talked about a few weeks ago the Supreme Court's ruling that deeply affected the Voting Rights Act. And so this is in response to that. The campaign is talking about the gerrymandering following the Voting Rights Act of 1965 Supreme Court ruling that weakened the Voting Rights Act. So transfer portals for D1 football and basketball are closed until 2027. So there will be no response from athletes who are already at these institutions. The real influence for this particular campaign would be high school students choosing where they're going to go in the fall and beyond of 2027 and beyond. The Congressional Black Caucus also sent letters to the SEC, the ACC, and the NCAA threatening to block the SCORE Act. That's a bill that would create national NIL rules. If you know anything about NIL, it's a very, very complicated space. And we don't normally talk sports on Too Personal, but this is a topic that crosses over from sports to culture, politics, and social issues. So I thought it was something interesting to talk about, especially because I obviously have professional athletes in my family. My older brother, for those of you who don't know, played professional football in the NFL for 15 years and is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My nephew, Mason, is in the NFL currently and plays for the Jets. I have two other, a niece and a nephew who are also NIL D1 athletes. So I'm very familiar with this. I was a NCAA athlete as well. I ran track in college. I'm very familiar with this space. I'm not an expert, I'm not a lawyer, but I am familiar with how all of this works. I do think that the boycott is interesting, and I don't necessarily agree with every aspect of it. Asking young people to forfeit opportunities that could change the trajectory of their entire family's future when we're talking about finances, when we talk about what the median Black household in the United States makes compared to the median white household, there's, 20 times difference in income, the opportunities to generate generational wealth. All of these things can be influenced on a college level now because of the NIL. There's no guarantee that you're going to make it to the professional level. And for some of these players, some of these young people, the money that you will make in college will be the big check that you get. You may not make it to the NFL. You may not make it to the NBA, but you could be a big time college player at a PWI and make millions of dollars. And this boycott is asking that these players who may have these opportunities at these schools that have that kind of NIL money in states like Florida, like Louisiana, Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, South Carolina, Alabama, you could be asking them to turn them down to go to states that aren't pushing for these gerrymandering voting rights changes. I get it. Young people have always been at the forefront of movements. They were deeply involved in the civil rights movements. The sit-ins were students. Many of the marchers were students. Many of the organizers were students. The idea that the burden of pushback, protest movements should not fall on young people, I think, is very silly. It's their future that they're fighting for. And I do think that pushing for young Black athletes to go to HBCUs, to bring their talents to HBCUs, is something that is important. And for some of them, it is the opportunity that they need and will end up changing their lives and will change the trajectory of those schools. When Deion Sanders was coaching at HBCU, it was largely influential and very controversial from a lot of the PWIs because Travis Hunter ended up going to an HBCU. I am torn because I know what that kind of money can do to change life for a family and for generations. But I also think when we talk about people standing up for things and making statements, we can't always default to the slightest inconvenience is worth sacrificing our rights and our freedoms. At some point, we do have to take what's happening seriously and not just talk about it. And I think that, to me, is the spirit of this campaign. Obviously, the NAACP is fully aware of the pay gap between Black families, white families, the wealth gap, the ability to buy homes, the ability to start businesses, the ability to get loans. They're fully aware of that. They're fully aware of the money that Black athletes generate for these institutions. That's why the campaign was put together. I don't think it should fall squarely on the shoulders of the athletes, though. There are plenty of people watching these games. There are plenty of people donating, alumni donating to these institutions. And it actually shouldn't just fall on the people supporting the institutions. The institutions themselves should have something to say about this.